particularly the reason behind the deterioration in the steel using sectors in 2019 was the weakening manufacturing cycle, which was coming from a very, very positive cycle, which was coming to an end, let's say naturally, because of the end of the cycle, but also because of, let's say, considerable trade tensions which arose from 2018 onwards, which have hampered confidence in manufacturing sector, particularly for highly export-oriented sectors like automotive. So in 2019, as a result, mechanical engineering and automotive already experienced a recession, -5% in automotive. And then in 2020, which is not still an actual figure, but we're very close to that because we have data up to Q3. That's our forecast. In 2020, we see a recession in automotive of almost 20%, which is the most severe recession among steel using sectors, and relatively lower recessions for mechanical engineering, -12%, and for construction, which is, as we said earlier, is a least impacted sector and has proven relatively more resilient, also thanks to some positive contribution from civil engineering and public construction. It's also important to say that a key feature which will be behind the recovery in the EU for the economy and the construction sector as a whole will be the implementation of the Next Generation EU, the public support scheme that has been launched in July last year by the European Commission, which will boost primarily, as I said, infrastructure and public construction projects. The automotive sector has been impacted the most by the pandemic in terms of output. The sector has experienced a slump of almost 20% in 2020, which will be followed by a rebound of almost 60% in 2021. It's also worth underlining that there are some supply issues which are due to the fact that the rapid recovery in demand from steel users, that's to say from car makers, have caused some supply problems, some supply shortages, also due to logistics problems, which remain there due to the pandemic in terms of transportation and supply chain issues. But this will, we believe, be restored, and normality will be restored very, very shortly. Vaccination plans, this is extremely important, are lagging behind compared to other world regions, and these cast a shadow of a substantial shadow of uncertainty of the recovery. There are a lot of expectations and trust on the unprecedented public support that has been put in place by the EU institutions, by the Commission through the Next Generation EU, and also the ECB has made sure that its unconventional, unprecedented expansionary monetary policy will continue up to March 2022. But this, we don't know yet whether this will be enough to support the economy.
In 2020, the COVID brought it severely down to 134.5, which is a kind of -16.26, and we expect this to scale up to 149 in 2021. So 2021 should be down only by 7% versus the previous 2015-2019 average, which is reflecting also what Mr. Sciamarelli said a few minutes back. Expectations are definitely brighter. On the other side, we have what we call a production hiccup. In fact, at the moment, we are running a sort of perfect storm scenario. A supply bottleneck, which was created by COVID, hasn't been restored. Hasn't been restored due to some structural shortage of production in Europe. Clearly, the biggest producer, which is the Italian Ilva, has some production scale backs due to still ongoing discussions even today between Invitalia and ArcelorMittal. Then in the wintertime, we had some cutbacks due to some restrictions into central part of Europe, mostly Thyssen and Salzgitter. Other producers had some financial issues, both in the production of hot roll and re-rolling into galvanized. So in overall, what was a an adjustment of cutting production in terms of blast furnaces and electric arc furnaces as a consequence of the coronavirus, of COVID, didn't find a solution yet. In 2020, we see, in January 2020, January 2021, we see a drop for flat products by 14.7%, despite the demand is very, very strong at the moment. And as I said, steel service centers and stockists are struggling to buy when domestic producers are not able to fulfill the request, some of them even offering for September or early October deliveries. And there should be a definitely hike into the flat product imports, but the protectionism is not allowing this to be the case. So in a moment where the European flat segment would need to import, this quota safeguard anti-dumping are preventing the market to be in equilibrium and to accomplish what the invisible hand would imply. The main source for hot rolled coils outside of Europe until 2019 was Turkey, which marked in 2020 a steep 26.2% drop. This is to the anti-dumping in place with the main producers, which have been more recently announced, and the previously announced safeguard measures, limiting the availability in quotas. The same goes for Russia, even though Russia increased, as we can see. From Russia, we can have imports mostly from Severstal. What we'd like to highlight about the scrap is that there are also some rumors about, from time to time, some requests of protectionism in Europe for the export of scrap, but this wouldn't be healthy at all for the economy. Reason being, as per these figures, if you look at the scrap consumption from 2015 to 2019, you see the average is always in the approximately 90 million tons. The import of scrap into Europe just count for each and every year around 3%. Q1 2021 followed more or less the path of 2020 because the quota of European scrap into Turkey remains stable, and Europe has been outpacing the United States as a supplier #1 for Turkey, which is again important for the economy of Europe as a whole, for the reasons I explained before.
Obviously, we have a mix in Europe, a mix between EAF and blast furnaces. You know, every work that has to do with new plants, adaptation and reshaping new plants is something which takes a lot of time. So it's a very long-term process, which, as I said, must lead to the total decarbonization and possibly also via the use of hydrogen by 2050. So we're almost back to levels before the pandemic. But still output in the supply in the automotive sector is low because there's a lot of uncertainty going on. As I said, uncertainty about the new regulation on electric vehicles and so forth. And on the demand side, let's say more on the longer term, at least if I look at what may happen from now until the end of this year, I do not see substantial improvement on the demand side.
Getting back to the automotive sector, I think that the main reason triggering this price hike hasn't been an extraordinary demand for automotive, let's say for cars, even though it was improving because the incentives are kind of triggering a replacement of cars moving towards into the electric, let's say, segment. This is also good for the discussed point of recycling. More cars recycled, more scrap ex-Europe into Turkey and other countries. But on the other side, the stocks were completely depleted